All right, we're continuing the essay written by Bergson, and in this part of the essay, he's talking about the relationship between science and philosophy, and he's going to go a bit of the history of our understanding of the mind, and the especially the presumptions and the hypotheses and the way that the scientist has to feign. Uh, the way that the scientist has to basically jest or treat his subject matter, which is the mind, in order to be be scientific about it. And he has to comes to the table. The scientist comes to the table. The physiologist, in this case, the discussion comes to the table with a certain set of assumptions, a method, and a certain range of experiments, experimental paradigm that can be conducted in order to observe and analyze his subject matter. And so he says, now Bergson's going to speak as if he were the scientist speaking. And he says, naturally enough, then, the scientist has said, quote, since philosophy does not require me, by any facts and arguments, to restrict in any way or confine to any definite points the correspondence between the cerebral and the mental, I shall treat it, provisionally at any rate, as if it were perfect, as if, in fact, between the two, between the cerebral and the mental, there is exact equivalence or even identity. As a physiologist, with the methods at my disposal, merely external methods of observation and experiment, I see only the brain, and can only deal with the brain. I shall therefore proceed as if thought was only a function of the brain. I shall thus be able to advance with more boldness and have many more chances of making progress. When we do not know the limit of our right, it is well to begin by acting as though there were no limit. There will always be time to draw back, after all. End quote. And then so now this is Bergson talking again. This is how the scientist has regarded it, and could he dispense with philosophy, this is all that he would have thought and said. But he cannot, and he does not, dispense with philosophy. As philosophers have not provided the plastic theory adaptable to the twofold experience, internal and external, which science needs, the scientist has naturally accepted from the ancient metaphysic the ready-made and systematic doctrine which accorded best with the rule of method he had found it most useful to follow. There was really no choice. He's saying that philosophy has failed to give us uh, the the metaphysic or the approach that would be adequate to studying the mind. So really, science has every right to go about studying the mind in a reductionist uh, or in a materialistic way, which sees a perfect relationship of identity between the brain and the mind, just being the same thing. So it's partly philosophy's fault for not having supplied the tools that the scientist would have needed to complement his external observations with uh, internal philosophical um, tools. And he says there was really no choice. The only definite hypothesis which the metaphysics of the last 3 centuries has bequeathed us on this point is that of a strict parallelism between soul and body, the soul translating what the body does, or the body what the soul does, or both body and soul expressing each in its own way, like translations of the same original text in different languages, something which is neither the one nor the other. How had the philosophy of the 17th century been led to this conclusion? So now Bergson's going to talk about um, how exactly did the philosophy of the 17th century, how did, historically, how have we come to this point where there was just this limited, all we could think of was either it was just the body or just the soul, or they were somehow parallel, and each was translating some third thing in its own way, like Spinoza. He's going to ask, how did we come about? How did this happen?